So, as some people may be aware, it is election season in DC.
Right.
And as that revs up, we are in the midst of trying to separate what's going on, who's saying what, who's going to do what, who's running, who's not running, who may be running. And so, me, as somebody who is a very concerned Ward 8 resident, hi everybody, my name is Chantal Fuller. And I'm an educator here in DC. I'm a Ward 8 resident, homeowner, political meddler, community person. I do a lot and I do nothing at the same time.
Wow.
So we have one of our candidates here, Rahman Branch, and you're interested in running for Ward 8 council seat, correct?
More than interested. It's my hope that Ward 8 will allow me to serve them in this capacity. So yeah, it's more than wanting to, more than being interested. It's continuing the service that I've done for a while. I didn't have grades when I started my service to Ward 8. So I'm hoping that they'll allow me to continue that work.
And so, Rahman, first of all, everyone should know that the way your name is spelled is not the way it's pronounced.
Right.
Which, has a few of us in the chokehold, including myself.
Right.
But, work in progress. So, who are you? Where'd you come from?
Indeed.
How did you pop up on the scene?
Gotcha.
Why are you here? Why are you asking for me to vote for you? Who are you?
Okay, so a lot of questions in one, so I'm gonna try to peg them all. So as far as the name goes, Rahman is my name, Rahman Branch. A lot of people, it's easier for them just to say Rock, and there's a reasoning behind that. Quite frankly, I was always a large kid, so Rock kind of fit both in an abbreviation of my name and also being a big kid. But I first came to DC. Well, I gotta respect the fact that I've been allowed to serve Ward 8 as someone who's not a native Washingtonian. I came to DC. I began at age 5. I have an aunt who lives here, and I would come every summer. My father would send me away from home every summer because he felt like I needed something that had a little more structure in our lives versus kind of hanging out in our neighborhood. And then after college, Wahoo, University of Virginia, which I'm very proud of. After college, this is the closest big city. At 23 years old, I was looking for what life would be like, and quite frankly, at 23 years old, lots of jobs existed in DC in the mid 90s, and so I decided to settle here. My first job was doing after-school programs in Park Morton, where I worked with youth doing after-school tutoring. And then moved to Lincoln Heights, where I did the same thing. And I started to notice a trend that a lot of children were coming to after school tutoring with severe challenges academically. I complained about it. I always say things like, man, how could these teachers just say, why? And then on a dare, my then girlfriend at the time challenged me to teach. Basically said, you complain about it so much, why don't you get into teaching? So on a dare, I applied to teach, and in the very beginning didn't do a very good job at it. Got a lot of support and got taught how to teach by a lot of great teachers, by a lot of great senior Black women in our neighborhoods who taught me how to teach. My girlfriend at the time would teach me how to teach every evening, and I would come back to school and teach the next day. And I saw my skill set grow because of that. And from there, I was given an opportunity to be an assistant principal at a small non-public school here in DC, and I struggled mightily there. And decided that I needed to find a way to learn how to become a leader. And I wound up signing up for New Leaders for New Schools. Went through the process of learning how to manage schools. Received a couple of opportunities to go different places. Was placed at Ballou. And believe it or not, 2005, I was placed at Ballou, and my belief was I'd be there for 1 year. I said, I'll come here. My background, I have an arts background, so I believed I was gonna go to Duke Ellington just magically. I got to Ballou, and 1 year, I'd fallen in love with the neighborhood and the children I was serving, and 1 year became 9.
I'm just curious, what were you expecting exactly to do in 1 year, I believe?
I was expecting to support the principal who was in charge, learn what being a principal is like. It's a resident principal program, so I thought I'd be the resident principal there, learn what the work is, and the principal who was there would continue to lead there, and I would take my learning and my skills and go to a place where my burgeoning arts, belief was going to take me. But then, as I had opportunities to look at other schools and interview for other school positions, the principal and I had a conversation, and it just became a place that stuck.
Do you think you can point to a singular conversation, person, incident that sold you on Baloo? What was it? If there was one.
So I can't, because I can sit here and tell you 9 years worth of stories about 1,500 young people who have said something or done something or interacted with me in a way or moved me in a way that we would be here forever. I can tell you that, there are a few young people who were so pivotal in my love fest with Baloo that I wound up staying in Ward 8 and still keep up with those children today. There are a lot of 30-somethings in the ward now who are, and I have to work on my verbiage because I always call them my kids. But I got to remember they are adults with kids of their own. But I can't help but refer, because I knew these people when they were 13 and 14 years old, and we took care of each other. But what I did find, what did keep me at Baloo, was seeing the growth, the success, and the opportunity, seeing young people's light bulbs come on, seeing what enthusiasm looked like when it went their way. But then also, and forgive me, I get a little wordy here, but also what I saw in Baloo and the surrounding community reminded me a lot of what home was like, right? I'm originally from Newark, New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
another city that, has some of the issues that DC has as well. Some a bit more nuanced, but, analogous nonetheless. So what was that like growing up in Newark?
Well, so Newark at the time, so I'm a child of the 70s and 80s, and it was basically it was a melting pot, quite frankly. I never seen a place that had so much diversity that worked well together. And what I mean by that, so there are different wards in Newark. There are North Ward, South. It's not numbered, but there are wards in Newark, and the ward where I grew up was pretty diverse. But what we all had in common was, quite frankly, either working poor or outright poor. And so living in that reality, we began to see what struggle looked like for each of us, but also what community looked like for each of us and what support looked like for each of us. So coming here and seeing Ward 8, what I saw similar to that was opportunity and people who were committed to one another in a way that was different than I'd seen growing up. It was similar that they were connected, but it was different because the bond was so strong, and it was based upon and so to a story at Baloo. When I first got there, I always heard, and it was almost like a song. You don't understand. This is Baloo, right? And so learning what that meant and learning what that connectedness was, that's what made me say, oh, well, this is a community that is like where I'm from, but nuanced in the fact that the commitment was so focused around we're all from this same place, and good, bad, or indifferent, that is our rally cry, right? So, anywhere in the city you go, if you say once a night, there is a response that you get, right? And so I've seen that level of commitment. Very quick story, when I was principal at Baloo, I lived near Anacostia High School. I'm at like a block away from Anacostia High School. And, I'm a little excited, maybe a little overzealous about being at Baloo. So I had a Baloo banner hanging off my door.
Oh, adventurous.
So I learned. so I learned. But because the principal of Anacostia and I were colleagues and we were friends, once kids knew that was my house, like at first, no big deal. But once they found out I lived there, all sorts of stuff, like all sorts of Anacostia paraphernalia was dropped into my yard. Like paper chip, potato chip and soda bottles as well, but all sorts of like hats and Anacostia pamphlets. Like they littered my lawn all the time with Anacostia stuff because I think they got a kick out of, almost, why are you down here? You belong up the hill, right? But it became for me a real source of pride. I mean, another story. So now I'm rambling, but another story, with connectedness is there was a time where I was living uptown. I was living in Columbia Heights, and I was driving to work every day. One morning, I come out of my house, and there was broken glass where my car once sat. And so for the next couple of days, I'm on the metro, I'm on the bus, right? So the children see me on the W4, and they're like, "Mr. Branch, what are you doing here?" And so I talked to a couple of them, and ultimately I told them how my car had gotten stolen. Maybe 3 days later, my car is in the principal's parking lot. Like that.
Streets are always watching.
And took care of me in that moment. Right?
That's what community is.
That's what community is. And so for me, like the stories of why I fell in love with the place, why I stuck at Blue was it became a relationship where I believed I can provide support. And I thank 9 years worth of community for trusting me with their children. On the other side, I thank the community because they really took care of me, for a really long time at a really tough juncture of life, which is how do you support a school that you're trying to turn around and, do this successfully and serve to the will and the needs of people. So
on the turnaround, thinking about that, you get placed at Ballou, we see the fanfare and Michelle Reed, and yes, come, this school is great, and you get there first day. Does it hit you? I am entrusted with turning this school around. Not only is the city watching, but the country is watching because we made quite a spectacle of ourselves during this time period. So, did it hit you? At what point did it hit you? I really have to turn this boat around.
I can't screw this up, right?
Right.
So really, what began to happen was I saw like the cameras and stuff that started to come around. Definitely made me not uncomfortable, made me aware that there were eyes watching, right? And one of the things I had to do, to find my true north, if you will, was to really make sure I dampened all the noise out and focused on a very specific task, which is how is this move I'm making, no matter what it was, how is this move I'm about to make, how does it support children walking out of here today better than they were when they came in? And how does what I do now help parents who trust me with their children to not lose trust in me with their children, right? So every step is guided by what was really in the best interest of kids. And I probably ruffled some feathers in that way because when cameras are on, people want to do stuff, right? We want to bring this in, we want to come here. And I recognize that. And there's a place and time for that, but I never allowed it to disrupt what the main thing was. And we just kept the main thing. And I say we because it was an effort of, several hundred people. It was more than just me.
Two of your biggest failures at Ballou.
Two of my biggest failures. Well,
we won't call them failures. We will call
lessons.
them yes.
Two of my greatest lessons.
Areas of improvement.
One of them was how to dissolve with dignity, how to deliver bad information in a way that still allows people their humanity, right?
Right. And, thinking of that time, I recall there was a documentary where the chancellor at the time, Michelle Reed, had fired a principal in her office on camera. And so that, I still remember that. And,
I remember that.
I hope our dear sis is doing well, but, that those things leave impressions. And so coming from a culture of that, where I'm sure you had to make tough decisions, as you said, given the fact that the school was not on the trajectory that the city, community, and, everybody knew it should have been on. What was that like? How did your relationships with the community cause issue with that as well? Were there, some schools you have teachers who taught the mom, the grandma, the auntie, everybody in the family. And so when, Miss So-and-so's not here anymore, can't be so.
Right.
How did you navigate that?
So a couple things about that. So one, referencing the public firing, the video firing, I think I was very intent on, at that moment, saying to myself, if I have to go down, I'm going to go down fighting for who my boss is, right? And my boss were the 1,400 children and their families. I remember a very vivid conversation I had with the chancellor where we have these one-on-ones. Every year, every principal sits down and has a one-on-one and they go over your goals and such. And I forgot how we got on the topic, but I said, Chancellor, I think this thing is kind of twisted around. And she says, well, explain. I said, in my mind, my teachers work for students. I work for teachers. So then, not sheepishly, but gingerly, I said, so you kind of work for me. And the room felt quiet. The instructional super was in the room, and he puts his head in his hands like, oh my God. And she says, that's exactly the position I think everyone needs to recognize, is that if we make children the boss and we really cater to the needs of children, then, we can do this thing a lot better. And I said, well, and I got a little encouraging. I said, yeah, so then you work for me. And really from that standpoint, her tune, at least in her tune in support of what we were doing at Blue, changed dramatically. And it became, whatever you want and need for your school community, let me know directly. I'll support you on that. But if you don't bring back results, and she was very clear, like, I will let you go. And she said, are you fine with that? And, because I was feeling myself at the moment, I think I said something like, oh, well, I'm betting on me. Oh, well, let's go. I shook her hand and I left, right? So then back to your question around, community, when I did get back to school, we did have a reconstitution where a lot of people were, there were a lot of terminations at our school, a lot of turnover for the first few years. And quite frankly, that turnover happened after being there for about 3 years and collecting a lot of data on what was and wasn't happening in the building. And really giving a lot of thought to how much we love people, but are people moving the needle for young people? Are children getting better in this situation? And there was data that helped support the decisions, the very tough decisions at times I had to make. It became about what children needed and what they were or weren't getting.
So now, we're on the subject of children. What would you say children in Ward 8 need right now?
Oh man, it's a laundry list, and it varies, right? But I think the first thing children need is a sense of security. They need to feel safe. I think that, while the entire ward, the entire district needs to feel safe, children need to feel safe. And safe looks a lot of different ways. They need to feel academically safe. They need to feel like it's a safe place to fail in our ward. And by that, I mean, we're not always going to win, right? We're gonna have wins and we're gonna have lessons. They need a safe space to learn those lessons. They need social emotional safety, and then safety in the form of stability. We have a lot of young people who are not stable in their home lives, who are not stable in their, there's food insecurity. There's a lot of issues where young people aren't being given the things that we know they need to thrive. And I look at young people, and I've been using this, it sounds very, very overused, but I use it a lot in education. When lettuce doesn't grow, farmers don't blame the lettuce, right? They give it more light, they give it more water, they change some irrigation systems, they might put up some fencing, but no one says that's just a bad seed, right? So our children need all these things that we haven't given them. And so a lot of times nowadays we hear people, especially when we talk about the crime and violence in the district, a lot of people are looking at young people as bad seed. And I think what we need to do is make sure that there's stability for them, that there are lessons that get learned, like we have to learn lessons, that's how we grow and improve, but we allow safe spaces to learn those lessons.
And even, bad seeds come from compromised fruit. So that's a conversation also that I think in the ward we have to figure out how do we support not only our children but our families. And the cornucopia of public safety sessions I've attended just as a resident, as an educator, government employee, all of the teenagers who speak talk about their parents needing help too. Their parents. I've got a kid who's struggling, but I've got 3 other kids, and I've got to pay attention to them too.
Yeah.
But the city won't help my kid until they get in trouble with the law.
So parent fatigue is a real thing, right? It's absolutely a real thing. And a lot of times we don't connect it to the real life challenges that parents go through. Am I a parent who's making a living wage, or am I working 2 jobs to figure it out, right? So we can support parent fatigue by making sure that every wage that we earn here is a living wage, right? Parent fatigue is real when it comes to the example you just gave. But then in schools, as a principal, and then prior to that as a teacher, you can see the warning signs really early of, hey, this seed needs more light or more water. And when we recognize that, how are we now, systematically stepping into places where we know children need support and parent fatigue is now impacting a child, and we need to, how do we make sure that we identify those warning signs early, not let it go unaddressed, to not have the tragedies that we've seen so often where young people get involved in situations and then community comes out and says, well, this was a really good kid, but they just really had bad options or bad choices in front of them. How do we make sure that we step in early enough to give more options and more access to better choices for young people? That's what we're not doing enough of in the district.
And so with that, what percentage out of 100 would you say is the onus on the executive to ensure that these safety nets and, things are catching these young people before they are interacting with the justice system?
Well, the executive is in control of all the agencies in the district. But it doesn't rest with just the agencies, right? So I would give, as far as running agencies go, 100% of that work is on the executive to do, but the totality of the work, that the executive probably sits somewhere around half of it, 50% of it, because the other 50% of it is, are we attacking opportunities? Are we, when opportunities do show up, how are we accessing them? Do we have the means, the information? That's where the executive comes in, right? Do you have the information on time? Is it accessible for you to get to? And then when it's there, we have to attack it, because what winds up happening, in my opinion, is if government makes a good faith effort, they might make it once, maybe twice, right? And then if we don't access that opportunity as predicted, then the resource goes away. And then we're kind of saying, well, where's the resource? So I think everyone owns a piece of that. One good faith effort doesn't, absolve you from having to do more work for people, just because they're not from the zip code that you support greatest, or the zip code that advocates the strongest, or the zip code that votes the most. You need to make sure those good time payments happen over and over again. So resource access opportunity has to come up multiple times. It has to be given over and over again. And when it comes, we have to have internal conversations as a community around the accountability of, it's right here, now you have to grab it.
So on opportunity and access to that, it seemed, at least from the outside, that Baloo was almost preparing you for your next role, which was the Director of Office of African American Affairs, whereas here you are managing and running a school community that is primarily African American. Mm-hmm. You are, literally the test subjects, for lack of a better term, of the things that you will begin to implement at the office. Mm-hmm. So do you feel that Baloo prepared you for that? And how would you say you were able to take those experiences from Baloo and use that in the broader term to then manage the first agency of that kind?
Wow. So Baloo did prepare me for what being of good service looks like. Baloo prepared me a little bit for what politics looked like. But sitting in the cabinet, it showed me things that I hadn't been shown, when I was the principal. But the preparedness that it gave me, it did do a few things. It helped me readily identify, how to support the needs of community. Because as principal, we had, a multi-million-dollar budget. We served thousands of young people and their families. We had a couple hundred staff members. So managing this reality of we're direct service to a population, I am responsible for this budget and have to use it, fiscally smart and make sure that outcomes happen. That definitely, prepared me for my next role. When I got into the Mayor's Office on African American Affairs, I was very excited because our office was in Ward 8, so I'm close to home, right? So I get to see, and it's funny because we would have community walks, and every time we're out, and if you've ever been on the mayor's community walk, it's the mayor, like 70 or 80 people, and they're walking up streets. And it became a running joke because so many cars would blow their horn or somebody would yell, "Hey, Mr. Branch!" And people just kind of look like, like, well, this is, it's a decade on this hill. Like, this is what kind of it yields. But what it did help me do is recognize that there's a real need for this office to do some real triage work and then some wellness work. And so we immediately began to get to work around how do we help, vacant and blighted properties? How do we help beautify spaces where young people have to live, our Space of Dream program? How do we help, residents of Ward 8 and Ward 7, Black residents of DC, become home buyers? In a ward where there was 70% renters in Ward 8, having an office in Ward 8, being in and about Ward 8 for so long, how to help so many more people become homeowners became a pressing and urgent reality. But then I recognized that we didn't have a budget. We weren't a codified office. Offices like ours, for our other constituents were getting millions of dollars. And rightfully so, they deserve every dollar to support the communities that they serve. But, we didn't have that, quite frankly. And it's because we weren't codified. So the first thing I realized I had to do, after kind of banging my head against the wall for about a year and a half, I said, hey, I need money. I had to go back to the community and say, hey, if we believe that Black people deserve an office that supports our direct, specific needs, we have to lobby for it.
Thinking about, okay, you're here, you were principal of Baloo, did that for 10 years, move over to manage an executive agency. What'd you do next?
So one of the things I realized I had to do in the office was help a lot of agency directors when we wanted them to really move the needle for the Black community. There was a lot of mindset work that had to happen in that space because a lot of people aren't instinctually thinking about how do I serve those who've been most historically underserved and overlooked. And so having done that for the mayor's first term, I went into the private sector and went back to my education roots, but also with certain government agencies throughout the country. And I supported moving the needle for Black communities in various places throughout the country. A few universities, some tech firms, just really supported people on a national level in making sure they're doing better for their Black constituents, their Black customers, their Black executives, et cetera. So a lot of coaching, a lot of leadership development work.
So of all your jobs, what was your favorite? Or what is your favorite?
Well, it was easily Baloo. And the reason why, the reason why that was the easiest answer is because I see the fruit of the work every single day. I see it in children and young adults who were my children. I see them introduce me to their children. I get to bump into students of mine who are now adults and say to my son, "Hey, like, let me tell you about your dad," right? And seeing them do well. It's a young woman. I'm sure she don't want to be identified, but she came to Baloo. She kind of did it all the right way. I wound up going to Spelman, became SGA president at Spelman. Interned at, on Congress, did some work with Oprah, India, LA, but then doing it all the right way, doing it the way that we said, can't afford to buy a home in her neighborhood. Mm-hmm. right? But did all the things we say you're supposed to do. Like, she is one of my driving reasons why, right? But also she's one of the reasons why this is my favorite job, because while it's a travesty that she can't afford to buy in her community, it's also a blessing to know that there are young people who are like really successful adults doing really well for themselves and adding on to doing for others, because now she's doing some of the same kind of community work, supporting people, outside of DC, unfortunately, but she's paying it forward. She's making sure that the next generation of young people become better adults and better human beings than she is. And that's why Baloo is the best job, because I had a chance to do the same thing.
So thinking about her experience, what would you say would take the under 40, six-figure earning folks, Black folks particularly, who move into the city to stay, especially in Ward 8, where, there's a sizable portion. And at the moment, they don't have the amenities that their counterparts in the upper wards have.
So, I think you hit the nail on the head. The first thing is that, everybody wants a neighborhood, right? So, and that looks like there's a cleaners I can go to, there's a grocery I can go to, right? I get to dine out in my neighborhood. So everybody wants amenities, because those are the trappings of a neighborhood. Those are the trappings of community. So yes, we deserve healthcare in our ward that is of highest quality. We deserve,
shout out to the new hospital.
Exactly right. Exactly right. We deserve restaurants in our ward where we can sit down with our families and friends, and going out shouldn't have to mean leaving the ward. Every ward should have a small town feel with a downtown appeal to it as well. And we have spaces that should be that. So how do we bring amenities to our ward? How do we make sure that world-class education exists in our ward? That population that you're identifying, their needs are no different than, the mom who's getting public assistance, which is, I want a school that I don't have to go all the way across town to go to. I want a great school in my neighborhood. I want to walk across the street to the football game at that great school. I want to, walk to that great school for the PTA meeting. We deserve that as well. And then all of these things are great to wish for, but everybody wants a place, no matter your tax bracket, everybody wants a place that's safe. And a lot of these things can't happen if we're not a safe place, and so we have to make investments on the front end of, like I said earlier, of giving opportunity to young people, giving opportunity to everyone in the ward to make a choice for something greater. We're not giving, people don't see an out. And we have to make sure that exists, because then when we decide differently from those opportunities, then we've earned the consequence of not adding value. We've earned the consequence of making our community unsafe.
So you're a father.
I am a father. I'm a very enthusiastic father.
Tell us about your journey through fatherhood.
So here's the funny thing. I wanna respect the privacy of children, right? But at the same time, whenever they decide to weave into the campaign they have. But I'm a father of 4. I have 3 incredible children. Our last minor child, my son, he attends Banneker. I'm very proud of his growth and development. I'm very proud of his development and his growth. He's an exceptional young man. I have twins. They're at Spelman and they're at A&T. My oldest is at Towson. So my children are, my biological children are, they're my motor, right? They're, when I was a principal, somebody asked me my why before, and I said, well, because, and this is before my son was born, I said, I got 3 daughters. They need to have great mates when they become adults. So, and because, at the time I was living, right near Anacostia High School, I was thinking about this community. I need whoever is going to be my child's mate to be of quality. So let me invest now, so I don't have to be a knucklehead dad later. Yeah. So that was my tongue-in-cheek why back then. But now it's my son who's, living in a neighborhood where, I don't want him to, have to, look over his shoulder. And he's a 16-year-old Black boy, and I recognize what that means in spaces and places in urban settings. Even where I grew up, 30 of us on the street, ages 14 and 19, all but 7 dead, strung out, or in jail. Right. So I get what it means to make sure. You know what I mean? So. Yeah.
All right, so a few rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Public safety in Ward 8. What is the biggest thing preventing us from having a truly safe community?
Opportunities to make better decisions, like access to real opportunities to earn a living, access to stable households, access to quality education. That keeps us from the reality of of greater public safety. We can't lock away. That's not the answer to everything. You can't lock everybody up. And as we notice, when you do, what's all you said rapid fire? I'm saying too much, but I'll just finish right here. If your remedies a lot of people away, more issues sprout up if you never address the root cause of issues, that stability and that insecurity. So all those things that we talked about, young people needing and communities need to feel safe. You have to invest in that in the front end to yield the end game of a more safe community.
Transportation equity in Ward 8. What was that? What did that look like? Or what should it look like?
So before the cameras roll, we talked about the fatality rate in Ward 8 being the greatest in motor transit issues. And so that looks like making sure that we're doing things, speed bumps and speed humps, bike lanes, all those are conversation pieces, but to really inspect and examine how we make it safe for pedestrians, bikers, and roadways. It looks like having a lot of conversations because bike lanes in Ward 8 seems to be a really big discussion piece, right? but there's a necessity to examine everything to make sure that fatality number is addressed, to make sure that everybody who's in Ward 8, whatever mode of transportation we use feels safe. Our metro has to be safe as well, so.
And accessible.
And accessible, absolutely.
Education in Ward 8. What would you say is the biggest hindrance to educational equity in Ward 8 right now?
So I'm trying not to be long-winded because you said rapid fire, but investment. Investment. How are we investing in the schools, the early childhood centers, and the wraparound services for children in our ward? So investment needs to be greater. The needs are just different than in other places.
Economic opportunity in Ward 8. What's holding us up? And how do we move forward?
What's holding us up is does this job pay me a wage that I'm able to feed my family on? Can I afford to live on this wage? Making sure that there are jobs that are robust enough for our population to be a part of. Building CTE programs that allow young people to walk into apprentice level jobs when they graduate. Make sure that jobs is that we have the kind of jobs in the ward that can pay people a wage they can live with, that they can thrive with, and making sure they don't always have to travel over the bridge to go and get those jobs. They have to exist in our ward.
Speaking of traveling, food access in Ward 8. We've got many of our neighbors across
That can't be rapid fire.
across multiple income streams struggling with food access. Seniors, children, people who've got good jobs, people who have no job. What is it going to take for us to achieve food access that's sustainable?
Rapid fire so hard on this one. So we have to make better choices as to who we invest in when we want to build grocery spaces in our neighborhoods and our communities. We have to look at our community as being the space where those groceries can come from. We have to look at the investment in the people of the ward who are there and aren't going to go anywhere to potentially be people who can now supply goods for us. We have to look at organizations who do the work already with urban farms and how do we make that a part of what we develop in this food desert. And the food desert it's way more intentional than natural disaster occurrence, right? So we have to make sure that we're funding real opportunities for people to stand up food spaces in our community. I think a great example of that is Turning Natural. When I worked in the mayor's office, Turning Natural had just opened up on MLK. And love what they're doing there. A great example was they would actually trade kids their unhealthy snacks for healthy foods out of the store. Just like, hey, you come in here with a bag of chips and some blue juice, give it to me. Here's a smoothie and a spinach patty. Like let's get you on a better route. So it's not just about access to food, but access to healthy food options. I'm sorry you did say rapid fire, but yeah, but I had enough.
I think that ship is sailed.
Yeah, I had enough children who came to Baloo with, blue juice and green chips and pickles and sunflower seeds with an egg in it. And I was like, come on, dude, like this is what you're eating at 8 o'clock and you're doing this by 10 o'clock in class, because there is a connection between what we're allowing our kids to have versus what we can really let them access. So we have to be intentional. So all these things, like when we talk about public safety, all these things play a part, right? Because if now I have stability in the home, if now I can, walk down the street and get something that's healthier for me to eat, or in the stable home, I'm getting food there, and I'm not having to make blue juice and green chips my breakfast, then, the outcomes for young people become better. They're healthier than we are if we do that. They're going to be brighter than we are if we do that, because they won't put all this crap into their bodies that we had to. I'm sorry, you said rapid fire. I one foot gets on the soapbox, because to me, one of the things that really works is when we invest in young people to the degree that I'm saying, because I've seen it and done it for a decade in the ward I'm talking about. When we invest them the way that I'm saying, we see the outcomes get a lot different. And the reason why that's important to me, and now I can feel my other foot stepping on my soapbox, so forgive me, but the reason why I know this is because when we did it at our school, we saw every metric for a good school, rise. Every metric for an unsafe school fall. Every single one changed because we decided to invest in our young people the right way, which meant investing in our adults the right way, which means, being honest and having some hard conversations about what we could no longer allow in the community and what we wanted to now grow and embrace in the community. And it wasn't always, lilies and roses. It wasn't always great songs. It was a lot of hard conversations and hard pushes. I'm very proud of that work, because how much time do I have on the soapbox? I'm very proud of that, because I look at that as a microcosm of what it is I would like to do. When I was in the mayor's office, I worked in an office where the idea of money in our community for this office wasn't there. So we had to go and get that resource created for the ward. When we were, when at Baloo, our building was made in 1960, and we saw schools getting $120 million budgets for their school. They were getting $89 million budgets, $127 million budgets. And the city came and said, here's $8 million for your school renovation project. Like, we talk about equity, like, where you gonna be $8 million? Like, that's a roof and that's paint. Councilmember Barry got us to $64 million. And he told me one day, he said, look, I got you $64 million. If you want more, you gotta do something about it. And we talked to the community, and the community said, yeah, this really isn't fair. And I feel myself on a tangent, but what we wound up doing, and this is the thing I love about Ward 8, man. Like, what we wound up doing is, families decided that this, at first 64 million looked great. And they were like, I placed a call, connect that message, come see how we're gonna spend $64 million. And families came and they were excited. And then we saw data. We saw every other high school in the ward got more money than us. But at the time, we were the second largest school in the city. And so the math wasn't mathing, as the young people say, right? It just didn't add up. And so our families began to ask questions like, yo, something has to be different. And we made sure that our community saw the opportunity, knew what had to be done. I provide the information and maybe talk to somebody who got some buses there, but the ward decided we deserve better, and they made $83 million more dollars come into that building. I say that, and the reason why I got on that tangent is because when you ask me about what has to happen in the place of public safety, one of the things that we have to make sure we do is we have to let the community begin to, speak on what they know has to happen, one, but two, hold everybody accountable. Everybody who earns a vote, hold them accountable to giving us what we need. And in your statement, whatever you say with, like I said, I say this all the time, like, my name is Rahman Branch, I'm a Ward 8 resident, I'm a registered voter, and I'm gonna remember your decision on this topic when you're up for re-election. Get into the transactional space of, you have to do for us now. Public safety will change in our neighborhoods when we make sure, and we don't say that just to elected officials, we say that to the people in our own communities as well. Hey, I've known you since you've been in diapers. You can't do that here anymore. And say that as a community. And I believe we can do it because we've done it so many times in so many other fashions and so many other places and spaces. So public safety, I think we can dictate terms. We just have to start doing just that.
Well, you gave us so much. So thank you
Sorry,
so
my
much
mouth.
just for your candor and just really, letting us pick you apart. That's on a small scale.
Yeah.
And so your last pitch, like if you could sell yourself to every Ward 8 voter, go ahead and do it now. What would you say?
Wow. I would let Ward 8 know that my history in this ward has been one of a doer. My job was to get things done for us. My job was to make sure that I identify resources that existed in government and make sure they came and served the interests of Ward 8. We've done that with home ownership. We've done that with cleaning up communities. We've done that with making schools better. We've done that with making people feel safer. We've done that with making sure that small business opportunity existed. My pitch to the ward would be, if we look at all of our data, are we happy with where we are? And what kind of legislation exists that either has us in this space or prevented us from moving out of this space? Let me continue to wrangle in those resources and bring opportunity to us in ways we haven't witnessed yet. I'm only here to fight for us and do that unapologetically and do that vehemently, and also to inwardly have conversations with us about how we have to do certain things to help ourselves as well, how we can then push on one another to improve. And I think we do that. I give us, a matter of time before, people are going to be in droves wondering how could they be a part of this community.
Well,
that's my push.
It, folks.
That's
Rahman
my push.
Branch, running for Ward 8 councilman seat. And
looking to earn your vote. I want to earn it, as we all should.